Hello. How you doing? This fine Monday. Is there any such thing as a fine Monday? Say Greek, and I've had many years of Latin. My Latin is really rusty, but primarily as a polytranslator, and also too as a Greek translator, I've encountered many, many words that, over the millennia, countless individuals, since in some cases thousands of years ago, have gotten wrong. And you see translations of Plotinus's On the Good, and of course Eudaimonia doesn't specifically mean good any more than the word logos means word. Of course, logos is probably one of the most difficult terms to translate from the Greek. Maybe not the most difficult, but it's up there, top 10 at least. Words like ananke, which are translated as necessity, but it doesn't mean necessity. I did a translation of all the occurrences of the Euristos Dias and the principle of ananke in the works of Plotinus. And of course it doesn't mean indefinite dyad, but it's translated that way. The most important word in Pali, the word samma, has been mistranslated now for at least 1800 years. Anyway, getting on to Eudaimonia. Same way we actually conceive of this meaning the good, and in translations from the Greek to the English as the good, or even A.H. Armstrong and all translations of Plotinus on the good. It doesn't mean on the good. We can actually subdivide this word and look at the etymology, and I'm not that much into, nor are you interested in, the etymology of the word, or the eu of the good, and daimon, the good deity. Well, what does this mean? It means living in full refulgence of what is most non-adversarial, or what is in greatest accord with the one or the good. It is living in accord with nature, but we don't mean that in the conventional metaphysical sense. And by metaphysical, I mean modern New Age, so-called metaphysics. It means and also too in the Latin, this is beatifica, where we get the word of beatification, where someone is living in refulgent glory. In the case where, of course, Christianity co-opted 99% of the really important metaphysical terminology, both of the Greeks and in some cases of the ancient Egyptian faith, and that's okay. I don't care. I mean, that's what religion is secularized metaphysics, as I've said many countless thousands of times, but I don't know if you're familiar with the word beatification. But we're living in close proximity, that the highest S&R in the course of a radio analogy, where most cases of most human beings, to bring this down into simpler terms, and this is where countless books, thick books, and I have like a 352-page book trying to translate one Greek word, ananke. Literally, that's all the book is about, and it never successfully translates the word ananke. I've got another book trying to translate, kind of a thick book, written by Torchia, an academic, trying to translate the word tolma. And it never accomplishes in translating the word tolma. But in the case of most human beings, we would consider ourselves, of course, as consciousness to be the broadcast and the physical body to be the radio. Most of us, are living in disharmony to, we can say, the light, the one, the absolute, the agathon, the summum bonum. I don't care what word anybody uses, God. We are living in discord and disharmony to the signal itself, such that we're tuning multiple stations at once. And of course, insanity and depression are fundamentally materialism. And I don't mean where someone is born with like a birth defect or something like that, and they actually have a true insanity or true, mental issues where, they can't tune reality. I'm talking about people who are psychophysically, at least, perfectly healthy, but they're suffering from materialism, depression, psychopathy, or any other countless issues where they have debased themselves due to outside influence or internal influence or other influences, and that we don't want to talk about those. You can guess what they are. Such that we're pulled apart at various different junctures, such that we're like that distant, ever tuned to listen to a good radio. Nobody listens to the radio anymore. Tuned in a good radio station, you keep driving down the road and eventually it becomes scratchy, and the other signals start to bleed in on the same frequency. That's how most human beings live. Eudaimonia is having, in our radio analogy, the highest SNR possible, signal-to-noise ratio, such that one is living in full accordance with the highest good. Like I say, and I kind of hate to say that because it sounds like New Ageism, talking about harmony with nature or attuned to natural order, but we are living the best life, and this is what Zeno referred to Eudaimonia as. Not living the best life, meaning, when you say living the best life today, when you say those words, you think of Epicureanism, where someone is living a mansion and has a Lambo and a bunch of girlfriends. Man, that guy's living his best life possible. We're talking about the best true life. That best life is what we would worship if we were sensualists and materialists. Then we say the guy living up on the hill in a mansion with all the cars and, you know, the money and stuff is living the best life possible, but of course he's not. A lifetime is a very, very brief epoch in the spectrum of history and future. I mean, it's next to nothing, so we can't seek or heap praise upon somebody through X number of decades, you know, lives a sensualist, materialistic, sensualist life. That's not living in accord with the absolute or the agathon. Eudaimonia, or living the good of one's best angels, as a Christian would say, but of course of the best spirit, Eudaimonia, such that we are living in accord. We are the best receiver whereby which to manifest actions, and of course actions have nothing to do with transcendence. We are a perfect conduit, and as a ham radio operator, we talk about near lossless conduits, like the very best coax. You should look this up on Google. You know what a coax cable is, where you get your satellite TV and your cable TV? Well, the really, really expensive stuff that feeds that, you know, $1 million antenna at a TV broadcast station, in other words, the lowest loss, is called air coax, such that it is literally two hollow copper tubes that are separated by a spiral of plastic that actually separates the two copper tubes, and that's what feeds ultra-high energy transmissions from, you know, those $1 million TV, well, not $1 million, but some of them are nearly $1 million, if not more, TV stations, such that it is the best conduit for manifesting in an earthly fashion. And then, of course, in the case of lenses, that would be, like an f1 lens versus an f2.8 lens. You know, 5.6 doesn't manifest that much imminence of light. We say it's not a fast light. f2 is better. You know, f1.8 is way better. Like an f1 lens is awesome. There's not much better than an f1 lens. It means it's a giant hunk of glass that's manifesting the best representation on the sensor as is present in the light at the front of the element. So Eudaimonia. I'm trying to give analogies and trying to actually define these obtuse, and they're not really obtuse from my perspective, but to give, you know, worldly analogies such that people could understand them. Give these simplex worldly analogies so that people will be able to understand it. Living in Eudaimonia of the agathon, or the absolute, would be as one were an f1 lens, as opposed to the rest of us human beings out in the world, 99% of us anyway. They're like an f6 lens, which is not fast. It doesn't manifest a lot of imminence. And this is what we get the word beatifica, or beatification, from. It's not about a good life anymore. By the way, I have Eugetha tattooed here on my fingers in the Greek, Eugetha. And these are actually positioned around the Pythagorean pentagram. Now, if you look up on a Google search the translation of Eugetha, you'll see that it says health. Like the Pythagorean, and the greatest principle, incommensurability of the Pythagoreans, as represented in the only perfect geometry of which is the pentagram. And the pentagram is nothing other than a three-triangle representation of this, the 115 triangle, the perfect and only incommensurable perfect geometry in the universe. Yugata does not mean, as it was written around in ancient Greek coins and representation of the Pythagoreans and Neo-Pythagoreans, it doesn't mean health, like, you have a healthy body and a long life. No, it means living in Eudaimonia, in perfect harmony, like a perfect radio receiver or a super-fast lens, in representing immanence within oneself, and therefore too a window for others to see, possibly or may not, depending on what, how occluded or dark their souls and minds are, but yet it is still perfectly manifest. This doesn't mean health. But every translation we read on Google will say, well, Yugata means health. That's what the Pythagoreans are about, is health. The Pythagoreans were not a fitness club, pumping iron and eating vegetables. It's not about that type of health. Not that there's anything wrong with physical and mental health, of course not. It is talking about living in Eudaimonia with the agathon and being immanence and beatification of that which one is in true, which is completely antecedent to the psychophysical and also to the persona non grata that everybody thinks we are and who most people think they are themselves, which is that person in the mirror when you brush your teeth in the morning, which of course is not who you are. It's kind of hard, and there have been many, many very thick books written on the good. Eudaimonia, they can never define for you. And they can also not really tell you, and I've got many books on the logos, and of course depending on the context of the logos, but when you understand how logos is used, there's no single English word that will work. It means word, proportionality, it means many things depending on the context. This is true, but when you understand how it is used by the Platonists, the Neoplatonists, Proclus, Numenius, Iamblichus, Syrianus, Damascius, Porphyry, etc., etc. When you understand how it was used, you don't even need to translate. You know immediately, right in your soul, what it means without translating it. There are many words like this in ancient Pali. The word Dhamma, the word Samma. There are a few others, but it doesn't mean, good. Plotinus on the good, Plotinus on Eudaimonia. Well, good in what sense? It means that you are the best possible by means of your wisdom, or lack thereof, but in reference to Eudaimonia, leading a good life means that you are living in complete accordance with, and nobody is perfect, okay? But under a supreme ideal position of Eudaimonia, of somebody who is still alive and yet has transcended the psychophysical, they are the perfect or near perfect conduit of the agathon or the absolute itself. People will praise that physical body or whatever, but that's not it. They're just nothing other than a conduit. And Eudaimonia is someone who, and I hate to use this analogy, someone who is it's not a medium, someone who will be a conduit for another being, but in a kind of a crude analogy, one is a conduit for that which is most antecedent to them, which is the animus, the agathon, yes? In Pali, the word would be Brahma, which is not a god, but in reference to the absolute. It's the reason why Gautama said his teachings were to be called Brahmayana, path to the absolute. And it's not a path of righteousness, it's not a path of morality. Morality has nothing to do with transcendence. If you were the only person on earth, what good is morality in relationship to transcendence and wisdom? It has no bearing on wisdom or transcendence. One does that which they are in accord with. One does not do that which they hope to be and hope to be antecedent to that by means of their morality. Morality is polishing your car and keeping it clean sitting in the garage. And conduct is only meant to be conducive to what is best. You keep your car in good shape and clean and whatnot, and balanced tires and everything, so you could drive it down the road and reach your destination. A lot of people get caught up in morality, and transcendence and liberation ontology has nothing to do with morality whatsoever. You are doing XYZ conduct such that it is most conducive to arriving at your goal. You know, you keep your car with new tires and the oil checked and all that other good stuff, not because that's important in itself, but because it is what is most conducive to reaching your goal. So the good life has nothing to do with morality. Christians love, and so do other religions, love reading into Greek Platonism and Neoplatonism, that eudaimonia is about leading a moral life or a good life. It's not true at all. It is about being, by means of one's self-proximity, and by self-proximity I don't mean the existential self, but being the closest proximity to the agathon, or the absolute, by means of wisdom, which of course draws you, because there's no distinction between wisdom and the transcendent self, and therefore thence, obviously, to the absolute. So I hope it kind of made in a very simplex fashion the clearest contextual meaning of eudaimonia vis-a-vis Plato, Plotinus, and his ilk, because there are a lot of books on eudaimonia, and they bring up morality and they bring up a bunch of other nonsensical stuff, and they never understand what it means. So I hope I made that simpler. Anyway, it's not about a good life. It means you're living the life of the good such that you are living what is most proximal to the absolute. It's like, that person's leading a good life. When someone hears that, they think, well, that person's living a moral, upright life. It's like, well, they may be, but that's not what they're doing. That's not the ends in itself. It's a means and what is most conducive to, but it is also to the refulgent native efflux or effluence of living in proximity to the absolute, or one true self. So that you are in eudaimonia because you are that which is most proximal to what you truly are, and the absolute, that which is most antecedent to the psychophysical. It is not a choice, it is a natural effulgence. So, just like when you're in the springs, I used to dive in these springs, is underground springs in north central Florida. You know, the further away you get from the source waters, the murkier and dirtier the water is, you know, it's full of fish poop and everything. You know, the closer you are, the clearer the water gets, you know, the clearer the head springs you get of the springs, you know, where the source waters bubble up out of the ground, you know, oh, there's no more algae, everything is perfectly lucid clear, and you're living in clarity. And the closer proximity you become, that is eudaimonia. It is simpler to exist, it is more refulgent to exist, it is more natural to exist. That is existence, in a superficial sense, of beatification. That person is beatific. Well, why is he beatific or she beatific? Because they're living in perfect clarity in close proximity to the headwaters or the source. That is true eudaimonia from the premise of Plotinus and his ilk. I hope I cleared that up, because it's kind of a difficult aspect of metaphysics to explain to people, because you can't tread the waters superficially in trying to explain eudaimonia. Anyway, thanks for watching.